There's a test we've trusted for decades, the IQ score, a single number supposedly meant to represent human intelligence. But look closer, and that number only measures a narrow slice of the mind: pattern recognition, logical processing, factual recall. It doesn't measure the moment someone stands in the middle of a breakdown and quietly figures out how to keep going. It doesn't measure the ability to stay calm when everything around you is falling apart. And it definitely doesn't measure the skill of soothing yourself when there's no one else there to do it for you. This is where the story of Gen X gets interesting, because this generation carries a set of psychological traits that are genuinely rare, traits forged not in a classroom, but in the way they were forced to live. Before we go further, if you're seeing a piece of yourself in these words, take a second to hit subscribe on Labyrinth Psychology. This is a space where we step into the labyrinth inside every human mind, not to get lost, but to understand why we became who we are today. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Picture the childhood of someone born somewhere between the mid-1960s and early 1980s. No smartphones, no GPS pinpointing your exact location, no app that lets you call for help with a single tap. When that kid got lost, they had to look around, read the signs, and decide on their own which direction to go. When something painful happened, there was no platform to post it on and watch comfort roll in within seconds. That feeling had to be sat with, alone, until it eased on its own. It's out of that gap, the absence of instant tools and instant backup, that a distinct set of psychological capacities slowly took shape, quietly, gradually, but solidly, over time. The first ability is a tolerance for ambiguity. In psychology, this is the capacity to act and make decisions even when the information is incomplete, even when there's no guarantee things will turn out right. Someone who grew up with answers always a click away often feels unsettled by uncertainty. But someone who had to find their own way, fix their own mistakes without a manual, tends to develop something different. A quiet internal understanding that not every situation comes with a clear answer, and that not having one isn't the same as failing. The second ability is closely tied to emotional self-regulation. This is the capacity to recognize an intense emotion, anger, sadness, panic, and find a way to calm it from the inside, instead of relying entirely on someone else to talk you down. When there's no one constantly available to reassure you the second something goes wrong, you're forced to learn a skill almost nobody is formally taught: sitting with your own pain until it loosens its grip. The third ability is practical problem solving, what researchers sometimes call practical intelligence, as opposed to purely theoretical intelligence. It shows up in knowing how to fix a broken appliance with whatever's lying around the house, knowing how to improvise when the original plan completely falls apart, knowing how to adapt to a situation you've never faced before. This kind of intelligence was never measured on a test, but it quietly determines how well a person adapts and survives in the real world. And finally, the fourth ability, arguably the deepest one, is psychological independence. It's knowing you're doing the right thing without needing constant outside confirmation, without needing a like, a comment, or someone else's approval to feel like your worth is real. If you belong to this generation, chances are you never had a name for what you carry. You probably just assumed you were used to toughing things out, used to handling everything yourself, used to not leaning on anyone. But what you're actually carrying is an internal system trained to run on its own, even when there's no one around to flip the switch for you. That's why, in the middle of a crisis, you're often the calmest person in the room. Not because you're immune to fear, but because you've already had practice finding a way out when no one was there to point the direction. This is also part of why it can feel hard to relate to how younger generations approach problems. It's not that they're weaker, they simply grew up in a different environment, one where instant support is always available, while you grew up in one that forced you to learn how to stand on your own. First, there are qualities that will never show up on any intelligence test. They only reveal themselves in the way a person gets back up after falling, without waiting for someone to pull them up. In the way they find their way out with no map, no signal, and no one beside them to ask for directions. Maybe that's the most enduring form of intelligence humans have ever developed. Not the kind measured on paper, but the kind measured by what's still standing after everything time has tried to take away.